I'm James Smith, and a warm welcome back to the GovX Show, our regular look at the inner workings of central and local government as we count down to the GovX Digital Conference in November. I'll be honest, it seemed like a good idea at the time when my colleagues pitched the idea of regular interviews, though with a face made for radio and a voice made for the written word, I'd rather assume that they meant regular interview articles. And as we crank out more of these episodes, I realise I should also have asked for a tighter definition of regular. But as my marketing director likes to say, there's 24 hours in a day. So in for a penny, in for a pound. And speaking of pounds, that's the perfect and entirely spontaneous link to the focus of this episode, how the UK government has professionalised the commercial function within the civil service. We're lucky enough to be joined for today's episode by Marco Salzedo, Director of Commercial and Contract Management Capability at the Government Commercial Function, based out of the Cabinet Office. Unusually for the civil service, commercial leaders within central government, so that's sort of grade 7 and above, are all employed centrally by the government commercial function, as opposed to being employed by the departments in which they're attached to. This, I suppose, has helped ensure a common level of capability across government. Marco has also been responsible for ensuring that the many non-commercial roles within UK government, who nonetheless are expected to manage commercial contracts, are provided with training and face-to-face support they need. So now that I've sold you the sizzle, let's get to the steak. So Marco, welcome to the GovX Show. How's your week been? Have you been winning?
Yeah, no, good week this week. Challenging as always, but overall a good week. But quite pleased it's Friday. Bit of an opportunity for some downtime over the weekend.
Yeah, I know how that feels. I mean, obviously it's not quite comparable with what's going on inside government, but I'm finding a lot of my time being sucked into meetings. And there's a thing about virtual meetings is that it seems somehow that people can cram more of them into a given day. Are you finding that? I mean, how's your experience of the shift to that sort of virtual catch up with colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I can't underestimate the move to virtual and just what a transformation that has been for kind of civil servants like myself. And I think for people outside of working in the private sector, there's always been a bit of a balance between some home working and virtual meetings and conference calls, etc. But literally overnight, we went from always face-to-face meetings 99% of the time to virtual working, and amazingly how people have reacted to that, really positive. There's no doubt that suddenly the day becomes kind of quite relentless, I think, with little time to move between meetings. So before, I'd often find myself running between meeting rooms, and that obviously doesn't happen now. But I think what I would say, which is a positive, is the meetings are far more focused. And actually it's strengthened the sort of, let's make sure we've got a really clear agenda. What is it that we want to get done? Is this a decision or is this a discussion? So although there's more of them, they're probably more effective, which I think is actually why during the sort of COVID time, government has been able to move very quickly, or we think we've moved very quickly on some stuff.
Yeah, I think certainly some people have said that it's been tougher for extroverts than it has been for introverts, but possibly in the scheme of things, that could still be a net gain overall, I think. And certainly we are very early days into this sort of huge sort of transformational shift to virtual meetings.
Yeah,
I think that the technology and how we use it is still in its sort of infancy, and there's the real gains possibly are still to be realised. So,
yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think what is interesting is if you think about the demographic of the workplace, the bulk of the demographic of the workplace are people who have grown sort of with the internet and taken steps as the internet has grown, the sort of virtual working, social media, etc. If you think about the demographic of the future, those people, the children who are today, they are perfectly comfortable to be on their phone all the time, video calling, networking via groups, social media, etc., etc. So I actually think in, probably 10 years' time, I think the way people work won't. For us, it feels quite strange, but I think for the majority of the workforce, it probably won't do. And in fact, almost going back to a sort of office face-to-face environment will feel very odd for them. So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, goodness me, who would have known that a pandemic would have caused such a sort of seismic shift, you know, in the way people work.
So I think I'd rather jump the gun. Apologies for this. So perhaps we could just start off maybe by giving our listeners and viewers a quick overview of your role in the government commercial function, and perhaps explain, I suppose, how you and your team work across and within government departments.
Yeah, absolutely. So effectively, I'm running a team of people, and we're doing two specific areas of focus. So the first one is helping what we call commercial people in central government at the moment, with ambition to move beyond that. We're about 4,500 who deal with commercial activity, simply raising their capability. And we do that through a tried and tested methodology of recruitment, and then assessment, and then training on the back of that, so that we know that, you know, we have qualified, accredited individuals working on our commercial activity, and coupled to that is an employment model, et cetera, where we centrally employ as well, which is unusual in government. Most people, you will find, are employed to work specifically in a department. In the commercial function, for our senior leaders, so our sort of what we consider commercial leads or grade 7s and above, we actually centrally employ. We've been doing that now for well over 3 years. It's a sort of tried and tested methodology, clearly taking a little bit of a turn as we move into the virtual world, but by and large hugely successful. You know, the quality of our commercial folks, our focus on learning and development. We spend a lot of time focusing as well, helping them think about their careers with professional career coaches, talent management, etc. And that's really come to the fore. Well, a good example, you know, last week, at the beginning of last week, I was asked to stand up a procurement organisation to support test and trace. We were able to, within 5 days, you know, source over 40 people out of the commercial organisation to go and move into test and trace, and they are all at the required level, and we were able to do that really quickly. We did the same for PPE as well. So that's the commercial side of it. We continue to grow, we continue to train. We're beginning to focus now on continued professional development. So once you've done the training program, you've reached the accreditation level, you know, what's next? How do we keep learning and development really up to date for commercial professionals in central government? And we have, you know, ambition to think beyond that. How do we help our colleagues in the wider public sector as well? So that's sort of, I would say, you know, work stream 1. Work stream 2 is contract management. So this is slightly different. We are completely agnostic as to where people work, which department they work for, and what work they do. And we have stood up a program. Part 1 is online. Part 2 was face-to-face. It will now be virtual, to help people who manage contracts in government. What we find is most contracts in government are not managed by commercial people. They're managed by people sitting in policy or in finance or in HR or in frontline operations. And we estimate we've probably got somewhere in the region of about 30 to 35,000 people who do this type of activity alongside a more formal day job. So we stood a program up to support them. The online program has just over 10,000 people registered. Over 7,000 people now are accredited, and we're continuing to build on that. And you know, we see it's what we call the sort of three-legged stool. So in order to manage public money that we spend with suppliers successfully, there are 3 legs to the stool that you need to do properly. 1, you need to make sure you run the procurement well and award the contract in the right way to a good supplier. Secondly, you need to manage that supplier's relationship in the right way. And then thirdly, you need to manage the contract in the right way. So our strategy is to try and strengthen those 3 legs of the stool, and make sure we, you know, get maximum value out of the contract, you know, maximum quality, but, you know, significantly better delivery for the taxpayer.
So I know you came to government via BT. I suppose, looking back across your career, what have been some of the key milestones for you, and perhaps some of the key lessons you've learned which have sort of fed into your your role now at the government commercial function?
Yeah, I mean, so I would sort of call myself a procurement generalist. I've been really fortunate in my career. I've bought lots of different things. I had a period of time buying for resale. I then moved into, pure procurement where it's not for resale. Some of the highlights, I was involved in the really early days of mobile technology. So I was a buyer of mobile phones for a long time in the really early days when Nokia was dominant. So I distinctly remember Nokia turning up to present their latest product, and it had a camera in it, and we all sat around the table and said, that's absolutely ridiculous. Why would you ever want a camera on your mobile phone? That will just never work. So it just goes to show how wrong people can be. So for me, some of the highlights are the step changes in sort of mobile technology that's happened. I was really fortunate to be part of that. Some of the lessons that I've learned along the way is time spent up front in the procurement activity before you even get to the process of awarding a contract. So by that, the time spent up on defining what it is you want to buy or the outputs you're looking to get is time well spent. And whenever I've been part of a really successful procurement cycle through the stages of sourcing, et cetera, to contract award, where we've spent a lot of time in the early stages, that's always gone well. And where we've rushed the specification stage, not been clear, not engaged properly with the market, inevitably we've awarded contracts that at a point in the future haven't gone so well. So I always encourage people who are kind of starting their commercial journey on their procurement career to think about the cycle and to think about that early piece of time as being really important. And I had no ambition to come and work in government. I'd never, frankly, even considered it. And then a couple of years ago, sort of started to have some discussions, and suddenly realised the complexity of what government does, the challenges, and actually just how interesting the work is. I probably quite hadn't anticipated quite how interesting it would be, given the last sort of 9 months or so. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great place to work, and I genuinely think there's a lot more that we can do to help build commercial and contract management capability.
So I mean, obviously you've been very focused since you joined on improving commercial capability within government. What, I suppose, was it that needed to change, and why did it need to change?
Yeah, so I mean, this is I'm going to cover this in detail during the conference, but we have what's called a case for change slide, and this is public information. So there were a number of pretty spectacular procurement errors, I would say, that cost government a lot of money, both in legal costs and in costs to the supply, costs paid to suppliers for poor procurement. And so as a result of that, there was a small piece of work done looking at capability across central government, quickly identified a number of areas lacking in capability, but also, probably simply just not enough good commercial people. And so this program was sort of born out of that, the whole concept of setting a set of standards, and then assessing people against those standards, and then where they don't quite make the mark, giving them some learning and development. The important thing I always talk about is my learning and development, the team's learning and development products are not how to do procurement. So how you would run an evaluation, or what a good tender document looks like, or how do you negotiate. We don't cover the sort of technical aspects. We rely on partners and actually a lot of in-house good capability to do that. What we bring and look at are the softer skills. So commercial acumen, leadership and judgment, risk mindset, how do you manage a tricky stakeholder, what does good stakeholder management look like, etc.
I mean, you mentioned risk mindset. I mean, do we think, looking at 2020, that a number of people I've spoken to have spoken about how they think they get a sense that the risk profile of government obviously has had to change in response to the urgency of the hour, but it's something that might be retained as we move forwards out of 2020 and behind us. What's your sense of that in general terms?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good observation, actually. I think what has changed is the discussion around risk. And I think previously, you know, risk was always discussed in the context of here is a risk and here is a mitigation, and then a discussion around is the mitigation strong enough against the risk. And actually, I think what has happened is the conversation includes that, but it's moved on to what we describe as risk mindset, which is the appetite for risk, regardless of the mitigation. Yeah, so I think that's a fair observation. I think those conversations will change. I think we've also learned in government the power of the supplier base. So certainly, you know, a lot of the areas where teams have had to react really quickly to respond to the pandemic, we've used the power of the supplier base to help us achieve outputs and better outcomes. And I think that has helped, where we've been probably a little bit more open to say, supplier base, here's our problem statement. Let's work with you to think about a solution before we even get to, you know, get to awarding any contract. So that very early sort of market engagement, and we've had to do that, you know, at pace. And I use the Ventilator challenge as a good example of that. You know, I think if you just go back, let's say, you know, let's go back a year. I think if somebody said, you know, we need to buy some more ventilators, let's go and ask McLaren, people would have gone, you know, you're completely bonkers. But because of the pandemic, we've actually been able to be much more open-minded, and that particular activity has been phenomenal, the way that bits of industry have come together to respond to that, you know, to that need. And I think that's helped certainly the commercial folks, but also lots of our stakeholders as well, you know, think a little bit more outside of the box.
So obviously, a few spoiler alerts. Obviously, you touched upon some of the topics that you're obviously going to be covering as part of your specific presentation. That presentation is going to be within a wider session, which will also include a panel discussion, which is sort of themed around buying into the future. So I'll try to sort of not use up all your material now, so we save something for November. But perhaps we can just touch upon, you know, looking at 2020 has obviously posed lots of questions that have, you know, we're in the process as a public sector of answering. When it comes to the procurement function, what do you think we've learned in 2020 that helps us sort of plot its forward direction of travel in 2021?
So I think what we've learned is the importance of having really good commercial people in the conversations really early on when problem statements are being put forward. And I think one of the really big, powerful learnings out of all of this is the ability for us to be more systems driven. And by that, I mean, I don't mean IT systems, but I mean when we have either a policy to put in place or a problem to solve in government, I think we've learned that by pulling together people from the different systems to work across that, people from finance, people from HR, people from comms, people from commercial, people from policy, people from treasury. So forming that sort of that virtual team, if you like, to come along, to get together and problem solve, has been enormously powerful. And I think that's one of the big learnings which we will need to continue to take forward into 2021, so that you know, all of those individual bits of expertise are brought together to form a solution. And I wouldn't like to say it didn't happen in the past, because it did happen in pockets. But I think what the pandemic has forced the civil service to do is to really optimize that cross-system thinking. It's something that you know, senior civil servants have been talking a lot, and I think we've now got really powerful case studies as well that demonstrates when you bring groups of experts together, you know, look what is possible to be achieved in often quite phenomenal timescales as well. And that's something that certainly the existing government is you know, pushing very hard on now, as it looks to fulfill some of its policy pledges. It is challenging civil servants to say, well, you were able to do that in super quick time. Why can't we apply the same learnings, the same benefits to other future sort of policy outcomes? So I think that's one thing you will see going forward, actually.
So we're coming towards the end of our allocated time, but perhaps we can sort of round off, sort of getting a better sense of you as an individual, just briefly. So what's perhaps some of the best professional advice that you've received in your career that you could share?
Yeah, so I remember somebody always saying to me, when you're thinking about the next job, don't think about the next job, but think about the one after it. So when you're ever thinking about taking a promotion or a sideways move, just challenge yourself and say, will this enhance the opportunity for me to go further? And I didn't take that advice at a point in my career, and I wish I had done, looking back. But now it's something I try to apply. And it isn't always about going up. Sometimes it's about going to do something slightly different for a while. You get different set of skills and capability, and then that allows you to move up. And
where's your hometown? Sort of, we've got loads of delegates tuning in from obviously across the country, but also from as far afield as Mexico, Brazil, and Japan. So, for the benefits of those from outside the UK, where's your hometown, and what are some of the sights and sounds you might recommend visitors to?
So I'm very fortunate. I live in the county of Norfolk, which, if you look at the map, is sort of the sort of right hand side. It's the piece that sort of bulges out of the UK map. I live near a little market town called Elsham, very sort of quiet and very rural. Very fortunate to live in that area. And I think if you were coming up to Norfolk, and in fact during the pandemic, I know lots of sort of fellow UK citizens had staycations, and the Norfolk Broads was we were certainly full during the summer period, let's say, with lots of people. Definitely the one area that's lovely, that part of the world, is right up on the North Norfolk coast. I love it. It's stunning, actually, and it's still relatively unknown, or was until summer, I would say.
It's a beautiful part of the world. Our marketing director here at GovX, I think his bolt hole was in Cromer.
Okay, lovely. Yeah.
Summer in Cromer, so constantly telling me about the crabs that he was eating, if not catching himself. But
yeah, it's a lovely part of the world. Very nice.
Great stuff. Well, perhaps last but not least, if you could make a recommendation for a book, article, podcast, or video that you've come across recently that you'd recommend of professional interest for our audience.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. So I'm quite a fan of TED Talks. So any TED Talks relating to procurement are always good. And then there was an interesting article, I think a few months ago, written about sort of I can't quite remember, but I think it was entitled that actually the role of the Chief Procurement Officer is dead, and what it will be replaced by is the Chief Transformation Officer. And I found that quite an interesting article, really thought-provoking, because they were saying that, look, with the use of AI and technology, procurement really needs to change, commercial really needs to change. So I'd go and dig that one out, written by, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but an American professor in association, I think, with procurement leaders, worth having a look at.
Okay. I'll do my research online, and if we cover that, we'll share that in the show notes. So Marco, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and obviously looking forward to having you join us for the GovX Digital Conference in November.
Yep, very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
So there you have it. Not only did we take a close look at how to develop the procurement function and commercial capacity of government, but we also got expert advice on where to run away to if 2020 continues as it started and civilization collapses. I'll see you with a car full of toilet paper in North Norfolk. So that's the GovX Show, my friends. We reach parts that other public sector transformation podcasts just can't reach. But if you think this is good, just wait until you tune into the live conversations at GovX Digital, coming at you on the 17th and 19th of November. There's presentations, panel discussions, and a range of conference socials where delegates and speakers will get to chat with one another one-to-one. Of course, we don't expect you to spend 3 consecutive days with us. I don't even expect my wife to do that. So our conference format is designed around a series of self-contained 90-minute sessions, each focused on a different pain point or opportunity. So this allows you to join us only for those sessions that really resonate with you. You can get your free, if you're public sector, day pass, or pay a small sum for the all access passes on the link below. I'd love to keep chatting and plugging the conference, but I have another episode to record. So I'll look forward to seeing you on the line again soon. Take care.